Talking about different areas in accounts receivable, primarily focusing on customer collections, but given whatever time we might have prior to lunch, I'll probably, I'll just try to occupy as much of that time in various areas as I can, so that we give you as much as we possibly can. So let me just start with a couple of things that I plan on covering in this session. So customer collections. We'll look at this interface again for evaluators here, just so that you know. I mean, we don't have any, buy this separately type of software that goes with Acclamare in terms of what we write. We don't write. If we write it, it's in Acclamare. We do use third parties for processing credit cards, because obviously we're not a credit card processing company. That's a completely different business from ours. So we just write the tools to integrate to some third party like that. Obviously, just like we did with UPS or FedEx, we have the capability to integrate to those products. And that's just included with the software. I had a customer not that long ago that is a fairly new account. That had a question. A question came up. It's like this they said they had a customer contact them. They really don't do very much faxing at all. And customer contacted them and decided that they wanted everything faxed. We want you to fax everything. And so I got the question, how do I go ahead and fax? I'm like, well, you can print out a copy and walk over to the fax machine. Obviously there are some methods that you can send an email through. There's various technologies where you can use online stuff where you can send a fax through your email. But Acclamare has faxing capability, but it integrates to a third-party program called FaxMaker. Almost said RightFax. You believe that? FaxMaker, GFI FaxMaker. So, and they've become more and more modern. Actually, I was looking at FaxMaker because of this conversation just the other day, and it's a lot less expensive than it used to be. They don't require any special hardware anymore. There's no fax board requirement or anything like that. It's all done online. But again, that's another example of the capability is in Acclamare to fax literally everything, but you have to have the third-party faxing software to do it. And so, point being here, customer collections in the past, I know with some softwares like, I got to buy this separately. Well, no, this is just part of the core functionality of the application, and everything that we'll talk about is core. We don't do any of that stuff that I'm talking about in terms of writing separate enhancements, and then you have to buy them separately. So customer collections provides a means to identify those key receivable situations. I really, how many I don't need to do a show of hands. I'll just ask rhetorically. I know a guy by the name of Abe Sanchez. Some of you remember him. Walking Bear. Mm-hmm. All right. His motto was always, every time I heard from him, his motto was always work less and charge more. That's what he'd always say. Work less, Troy, and you charge more. That was his motto. And but I also he's a character. I can remember when I worked at the old building actually in North Dallas with Dimuses. We were in a shared office environment there, and I got a call that came in to the receptionist who wasn't a Dimuses employee because it was shared offices. Those receptionists kind of took care of everybody on that floor. And I was fairly new. I was actually a fairly new Dimuses employee, and I was on the opposite end of the floor, and I'm in my office, and I'm sitting there, and I wasn't doing a Chris Farley blowing in the fan and wasting time, but I was sitting there, and I can remember that call came in, and the receptionist goes, I've got, and I don't know where I was thinking. I probably should have picked up on it, but goes, I've got Sam Bacon from the IRS on the phone for you. And I'm like, what in the world? That's not good. So just one of those deals where the flashing lights go on in your back window, even if they're not pulling you over, it's like your heart stops for a second. I'm like, why is IRS Sam Bacon calling me? And I picked up the phone. It was Abe Sanchez. So he was calling to chat about a couple of different things. But I really thought he had some terrific advice when it came to collections, particularly in talking about the fact that statistics were done. I love the couple of studies that he used to quote. One in which he talked about the fact that he did a study of businesses to determine companies that were more current or faster paying companies to others based on the name of the company. And so what they found was companies in the top third of the alphabet in terms of their starting, the letter, if you will, in the start of their company name, those companies were faster payers than companies that started with some alphabetic character in the bottom 2/3 of the alphabet. And what they were able to determine was collection activities were done off of an aging report that was printed in alphanumeric order. So collectors would start their calls in the alphas, start making calls to people that were past due, traditionally never get all the way through that list before they started again. And so consequently that translated into companies that, were started with a letter like A, B, or C, were faster payers than others. And, the beauty of the collection area that we'll look at here in just a second is that it'll allow you to use the grid to sort on key pieces of information. And this is really the key that, you can't emphasize enough. Large balances that are marginally late are far more important than small balances that might be, prehistorically late. So 2% for every 30 days, you have receivables open. And that's so anytime and that's just real, like kind of a real dollar figure, your margins get eaten up very quickly with receivables. Sometimes you don't think about it, but if you give somebody 60-day terms, you got to look at how much money they keep open for those 60 days, 2% for every 30 days. Multiply that out, and then just take it right off of the margin that you make from that particular customer in order to determine how profitable they are. That 2% is made up of a lot of different things. It's made up of cost of money, obviously, but it's also made up of the various activities that go into contacting a customer, following up, the resources involved, software that's involved. There's lots of expenses that you can account for that ultimately that you find in that 2%. I'll go through and look at the customer collection screen so you can see that. We'll also cover these areas. That collections provide a means to record notes on calls and specific invoices. So that gives management an opportunity to see what collection resources are actually doing. So, if you're not the one placing the calls, you might want to just be able to see quickly who got called yesterday. What were the results of those calls? So you have the ability to keep track of that kind of thing, as well as to set follow-up dates to kind of help you shape your collection activities each day. So, if you go through the process of making those calls and setting follow-up dates, then those accounts won't continue to appear in your collection call list until their follow-up date is triggered. One of the things that we were talking about during the break is, we do have a calendar feature on the main grid of our screen, and Don was mentioning, something that he liked to see us incorporate that new follow-up date in quotes to automatically populate into our calendar in the middle of the screen. And so I think that's something that you'll probably see us work on over this next, calendar year. We're talking about it at our next conference. That might be one of those things that we're saying, was introduced into the system. Something that would allow you do the same thing with collection calls as well. So something to help shape your activities each day. All right, I'll go through these different features in the interface, adding notes to one or more invoices, one or many, view historical notes from prior conversations for specific invoices, update the key customer information, take payments. There's also, I'll just add to this, on your jump drive, there's a white paper that kind of goes through the customer collections interface and defines all the various fields and actions that you can take in that process. But again, I'm going to go through it here in just a second on the software. These different things that you can quickly do in there: take a payment, make an adjustment, answer questions by quickly going into the invoice. I'll go into all of this actually in the application. So let me just hop in there. All right, we're going to move right into the application. Close this, close this. All right, so let's start right here in transactions, accounts receivable, customer collections. All right, so on your main screen here, it's pretty clean. You got your filters up in the top left-hand side. You can put in a specific customer if you want. If you do that, then regardless of follow-up date or other information, if you are specific, to a customer, it's going to pull in that account and let you go through the collection call process. If you leave that field blank, then it's going to use the other filters to retrieve in all of the applicable accounts. So in reality, this field for customer right here is very seldom used. It would be kind of a very seldom situation unless, you had a customer that was calling to place an order and they were on some kind of credit hold, and you've already talked to them and maybe you wanted to update, their collection call information because you just talked to them. But they're not due for a call or what have you. I mean, that'd be the only time that you really would filter on the customer right there. Current balance greater than or equal to this. So if you're not interested in focusing on customers, again, that might have, some small freight that's in dispute, or sales tax, or some small amounts, maybe you're not interested in pulling those customers in. You're only interested in customers with a balance that's greater than X, then you can filter that way. And then, of course, in terms of whether they're at least a day past due or more, you can bring those, you can filter those out, or you can use the grid to do all of this, which I will show you as well. So once you've made that determination, let's just go ahead and make this a little simpler for everybody to see why we're working in this format. Let's go large icons for a second, and let's put the image and text next to my shortcuts so everybody can see that. This is functionality that's basic in Acclamare in every single screen. You can increase the size of your icons. You can you can add image and text. You can put shortcuts on there. I'll go through that in the sales order session later. I'll go ahead and hit the refresh button. Goes out there and retrieves in a list of customers that meet my criteria. So I can then sort the grid however I want to sort it. So obviously, if we take into consideration some of the basic collection management practices, then we probably want to sort by the largest balances first, regardless of name. Coincidentally, Pastoral Care starts with an A. It happened to be the largest balance and outstanding, so obviously my demo data is not very good. But anyway, you can see our list here. You can, again, sort the grid in all kinds of different ways to be effective. Obviously, open document balance makes the most sense in this scenario. It will save your customizations the way that you were in the screen last. So in this case, I actually had sorted on average days to pay last, and so that's why it came in this way. But the default sorting method on this grid happens to be open document balance in descending order like this. So again, the grid has capability to be able to add information. Various pieces of information could be incorporated into this main grid right here. So if I'm interested in seeing, the last time these guys cut us a non-sufficient funds check, if I'm interested in, what their high balance was or their high balance date, any of that could be incorporated into the grid, just like I did here. Drag and drop it wherever you want it. So I can also see right on this main screen, I can see, detail that makes up that balance. It's readily visible. I would also add that this screen, let me just minimize it slightly here. Not that much, but we'll fix it. Is that this area also is tied in to the dynamic inquiry. So as I go from record to record, you can see back here in the dynamic inquiry that other information is updating for me. I can see contact names. Of course, there's all kinds of things available in the dynamic inquiry. If I want to look at their existing aging information, I can see that in the dynamic inquiry. Let me just kind of set this up just a little bit. So I can see that. I can see their past sales history too. What they've been buying. I can add or incorporate into that. Obviously, let's put in an item number just for example purposes here. I'm not sure that the person in collection would really concern themselves much with that, but just to give you an example of the fact that that this area of the software is tied into the dynamic inquiry. So you'll notice now as I go from record to record, the dynamic inquiry is refreshing in the background with that information, so that as I prepare to initiate a call to the customer, I have all this information available to me. Again, the dynamic inquiry contains 20 different inquiries, and that information is just automatically refreshing according to wherever I am in the application. So if I identify a particular customer that I'm interested in contacting, all I do is highlight that record. I'm going to emphasize this in every session. This will get redundant, hopefully not too irritating, but on the far left-hand side of every grid, in this case it looks like a solid block. Some interfaces it's a little bit more of a actual square, but the far
on the skin.
Yeah, it depends on it's totally dependent on that. Okay.
Yeah.
So depending on whatever skin that you actually have on your interface, in this case I've got that new Office 2016 colorful. This is the row indicator over here. So where you see that caret, that little side triangle right there, that indicates the row that you're selecting. And I'd like to see you, as well as those members of your staff or your employees back at your offices, get in the habit as much as possible of selecting rows by using the row indicator on the left-hand side when you want to select the row. Not that you can't do it by clicking right here or clicking right there, but what you'll find is that the row indicator, if you would get used to using it, is that it will make sure for sure that you are selecting the entire row rather than actually just being in a field on that row, so that if you're interested in actually conducting some kind of edit or deletion, if your intent is to highlight the row and delete the row, you're selecting it The other thing that you will find in the application is that we will have information in the row indicator. So, and I'll go over that in the sales order entry stuff later this afternoon, but sometimes in the row indicator there'll be a little black dot indicating that there's information. And if you take your mouse and fly over the row indicator, put your mouse right there, it'll actually give you the full text of what it's trying to alert you to. So I just think that, you know, the row indicator gets lost oftentimes in your daily use of the application. So select the particular row, start the call. Okay, once I go ahead and start the call, the system will retrieve the key customer information into the call screen itself. And there's a lot of functionality within this screen that's available to you. So again, who are you talking to? And we specifically, you know, everywhere in the system we have customer contacts. You could see the contacts a second ago in the dynamic inquiry. Traditionally, you know, sales orders, quotes, whatever, order by, it's all tied into contacts. You can pull a contact, bring it in. We specifically have not tied that into this field right here so that the person that's on the phone actually will physically note who they talk to, all right? Rather than basically cheat and try to just throw some name in there, some arbitrary name. So the point really is, from a business practice standpoint, you know, you type in who you talk to. So I put in who the slow payer is. Coincidentally. All right, and
we really wonder what's coming next.
Yeah, and then I can go ahead and type in various general notes about the overall conversation. Okay, whatever they may be.
He threatened me.
Exactly. So now while I'm talking to the customer and I'm in this screen, I have the ability to see a lot of information about them, and I also have the ability to do some things to their account. All right? So I can, from within the call screen here, I could actually put the account on hold. All right? So while I'm talking to them, if the conversation doesn't go exactly like I think that it should, I can change the customer status while I'm in the call and say, okay, this customer's on hold right now. And then obviously that won't prevent sales orders from getting entered, but it will put them on hold for status. And then of course somebody will have to observe, you know, that order, look at it, that has a responsibility to do so, and release it accordingly. I can change their customer class from here, or their customer type. If I use those for Abe Sanchez classifications, all right? You can use them for whatever you want, but if you have some means of you use AR classes or customer classes for grouping customers based on how they pay, or for alert purposes, management review, then you could use a class designation to help you get more effective information, if that's what you want to do. They might indicate that, oh, well, we're no longer at that address, you know, please update it. So from right here, you can go ahead and update those addresses. City, state, zip, phone, email, you know, and then the various information about their account relative to credit. All of that can be updated right from within this particular screen. All right. So while you're having the conversation with the customer and you remind them of the particular invoice that's open, you know, we're still waiting for payment on invoice number 156300, and they indicate, well, you know, I didn't get it, or it has the wrong PO number on it. You know, whatever their issue is with it, I can actually drill into that invoice from here, pop the invoice open. I could add additional notes to the invoice, even if it's posted, I could put the invoice on, I could dispute it so that actually I know that it's been talked about, they're disputing payment. Disputing, of course, can pull it out of the aging buckets so that it then looks more current on your aging. If you have to take an aging to a banker and they're looking at, why is this past due or why is it out there and it's this old? Again, I can come in here and I could manipulate the PO. If the PO is wrong, I could go ahead and change it to something else. And then, of course, from this screen, I could go ahead and email to a specific person or fax it if I'm tied into FaxMaker. So while I'm having this discussion, I can do all of that. If they send me some correspondence about this email, then obviously I could attach that correspondence right to this invoice. And then I'd have that historically to go ahead and look at.
So you can get that from your email if you hit an email from them?
So yeah, attached documents, when you go in here, basically allows you, let me just confirm before I pull the trigger on that I've got my folder set up out there. No, I don't have one, so let's set one up real quick. I'll just stick it out here in my documents for now. Actually, let's stick it right in there. That's good. Did I get cached on entry? Or do you think that it will be available? All right, so let's go back in here. So just to answer that question, if I had clicked on that, without that file folder location in there, which will be a shared location on your network where you keep these documents, then this would have it would have popped open a message before this opened saying you need to set up your path. So we set the path up. So this just basically allows me to go out, and at this point I can attach any kind of document to this. Doesn't matter what it is. Your operating system reads it, you can attach it. So if I go out here and, oh, that works. We'll bring in whatever, that's a PDF. This becomes attached to it, and I can have, more items attached, whatever they may be. And then if your local computer will read it and open it without Acclamare, then it'll read it and open it in Acclamare. You would just double click on the document in order to pull that up. Okay, so that's all. And it, like I said, Excel spreadsheet, Word doc, PDF, picture, doesn't matter. Okay, so then that becomes permanently associated with that invoice. If I just scroll, I'm going to go to the previous invoice here. It's not related to that customer. But now I'm just scrolling next, previous, which some of you can't do in your existing software if you're evaluating, or you couldn't do in your prior software. You can scroll through records, whether it be items, customers, vendors, invoices, whatever it is. You can scroll through the records. Now I'm on, 156,299. There's nothing attached to that particular invoice. What I just associated was to this one. This invoice is the one that has the two documents associated. That's how that works. So for those of you that aren't familiar with it, that literally works in a lot of areas, a couple dozen probably in the application at this point.
Yeah, it's probably getting up towards 20 or so.
Mm-hmm. All the key areas that we've been asked for, let's put it that way. So back here to customer collections, we're still again on this invoice. Right from within the customer collection call area, obviously we can drill. If there had been prior discussion on either of these invoices, then I would have a historical note that I could look at in there. If I want to, from right here, while I'm in the call talking to the customer, I could go ahead and, I can print, email, or fax from within here. I don't have to go into the invoice. So right from in here, I could go ahead and send them a copy of the invoice that I'm on, or I could send them a full statement. Say, here's what's currently open on your account. So all of these options are available to you while you're talking to the customer on the phone.
If you change that PO number, will that PO number show on that invoice?
It actually will, yeah, let's just fire that up. It might take just a second for me to get my reporting piece to fire up, but let's just fire it up here. We have a second, and that way I can keep using it.
Troy, can you, do you have that functionality in the sales invoice itself, or do you have to be in collections?
To attach document, or?
To be able to attach it or change a PO number?
No, you can just do it directly in the sales
In the
invoice
sales.
screen. Yep, because that's all it's opening. Okay, so let's go ahead and go down to this PO. So the question was, let's do a couple of things here. So let's say, well, we're not at 400 Cato Terrace anymore. We're at 7th West Terrace, and we're not in building C anymore. We're in building X, Y, Z, and so we've changed all of that. And in addition to that, that's the wrong PO. We come over here, change this to be to whatever we want it to be, and let's do a print preview and see what we got. Okay, so address is updated, 7th West Terrace, building XYZ, and there's my example purchase order, all on a posted document. We haven't done anything to mess with the integrity of the document from an accounting standpoint. All we've done is make changes to header information.
Is the original still available to you, or have you just overwritten it and no
Nope,
longer have the original?
it's definitely overwritten at this point.
That's not what I received.
So yeah, all those changes basically kind of take effect and are permanent, if you will. Okay. All right, so those are some examples of what you can do to that existing document. Other things that you can do while you're in here. So you can just put a note in and not, specify a follow-up date, or you can, indicate I'm going to follow up on this account later, and put in whatever date that is. It's obviously defaulting 2 weeks is what it's defaulting in there. But if I said, specifically, I'm going to call back next Thursday on the 16th, I can change it to be that. Kevin indicated he would have the funds next Thursday. I will call then. I can go ahead and write that information in there. I can use various actions to apply that current note to everything that's out there. So if I had 10 invoices that I talked to him about, then I can just basically copy that to all of the invoices that are in there. That follow-up date, I can push that on too if I want to. So depends on what I've talked to them about and what's going on in the conversation. I can do all those things. When I'm done with that particular call, I can just close the screen and move to the next one. You'll notice as I move along here, and I'm using a touchpad on my laptop, by the way, so if you guys weren't impressed with my mouse skills before, you will be now. All right, so you can see, that line gets grayed out. I've called them, so I'm burning down this list of calls to make. That account now, if I was to exit the collection call area, come back in and just hit refresh, it's not going to come back in until the 16th. So at this point, I can initiate a call to the next particular account. Again, go through the process. Let's say that in this particular case, the customer's like, I want to go ahead and make a payment right now. Will you take a payment? I've got a credit card handy. Here you go. So you can, from this screen, go ahead and select take a payment. Enter that value, basically take a payment. As soon as you tab off of the widget to indicate that that's what you've selected, it'll open the payment screen. This isn't a different screen. This is the customer payment screen, just like when you're taking a payment at any time. So at this point, I can specify, that they're going to pay, with credit card, if that's what's going on. Maybe I noticed while I was talking to them that they had a credit on account that hadn't been applied yet. Then I could pop in here and I could actually do the credit application. So I could take care of it, in that way. Or, I'm not integrated on this box to payment logistics. If I was doing that, then obviously I could take the credit card, enter the card information, and process it all online, directly, get the authorization. Again, we made a change to go with payment logistics. Been a couple years now.
Yeah, like 3
years.
3 maybe 4.
So we are 100% compliant with all, PCI DSS requirements in the payment card industry. We used to have, I think we actually went down the road of integration to, we were integrated to PC Charge when we first introduced Acclamare. Then it got to a point to where it wasn't a viable product any longer, and we had to move because it wasn't supported and it wasn't compliant. So we went with payment logistics. Now, the reality of it is that although we've chosen to go with payment logistics, that doesn't force you to go with payment logistics. There are some options. I'll give you a couple for credit card processing. So option one would be I go with payment logistics and I go with them for my merchant processing. So basically, I just switch everything to payment logistics, software and processing. They have, you can investigate their charges. I know we've got several folks in here that use them and are really happy. We've been pleased ourselves with how responsive they've been to us in terms of integrating their solution. So you can go with them. If you use them as the merchant processor, there's no charge whatsoever for their software or the installation. It doesn't cost you anything.
What about per user? How many units, how many card readers can you have? Do they charge?
Well, you have to buy the card readers.
Right, but then there's
But no, there's no limit. Nope. And so that doesn't cost a thing if you go that direction. If you go with them but want to use your existing processor, then they do charge you a fee for their software initially and for the setup, $200 or $300. And then they'll charge you a monthly fee, which is around $15 a month. It's not very much. To actually use their software, but a different processor. Is Highlock doing it that way? You guys have a different processor?
The vast majority of our credit cards are taking prepayments, so.
I just remember that it seemed like when we first did your integration, it was like your processor was sending back different codes that we weren't anticipating. So that's why I thought maybe you guys were using somebody different to actually do the credit card processing, so to speak.
It's
But
a prepayment, so there's no invoice there. I think it would work if it was an invoice level.
okay,
And so I think it would work.
yeah. So there's examples of customers that are using all payment logistics, some that are using payment logistics with their own processor. They support, they support hundreds of processors. And if, you just have to talk to them, tell them who you're using. They'll tell you if they already support them. If they don't, then they'll figure out what they need to do to support them. And then, of course, if you don't want to use payment logistics at all, you can go, you can still use Acclamare, manually and not process through the system. And if you want to process through the system with someone else, I know that Schmeely, I know that Advantage, a couple of our partners, have the capability of integrating other processors right into the system automatically, if that's what you'd prefer. I think Schmeely, USA ePay, and I don't know who else that you've got tied in, but you know, there are other options out there if you want to use them. We wrote the interface in a way that you should be able to, you know, choose who you want. It's open enough that the format's there, but we don't tie you into using payment logistics. That's just FYI. All right, so I'm taking this particular payment. If I want to work, if I'm taking a credit card payment, but I've got a separate station or a box or whatever I'm using, I can do it the old-fashioned way. Go process their credit card. I can put in whatever their reference number is from the transaction, whatever the amount happened to be that was paid. In this particular case, let's just go ahead and let me sort these by invoice date. I'm going to go ahead and indicate that they went ahead and paid $2,200. So in this particular instance, if they paid $2,200, I can either check this row and this row. If I have my screen customized, I could have the automatically apply this payment set up. Oh, it was $90. Good reading. Anyway, but that's how it works. So I can apply the payment automatically in this fashion. So there's various ways to go ahead and do that. Check all lines, check no lines, check 2 lines. You know, whatever it may be that you want to do, you have options within this window to go ahead and do that. All right. If I want to take an AR adjustment or make an adjustment, let's just say, well, let's find a different customer that maybe has something that's a little bit smaller, so that's a little bit more practical. All right, so let me just expand a couple of these open and find someone. Let's say, now these guys will work. That 1335 looks good. So we'll start our call. And in this particular case, if I want to go ahead and make an adjustment, if I fire that particular option, it'll take me right into the accounts receivable adjustment screen, from which I can go ahead at this point, put in, you know, that I'm adjusting that balance off. I can choose an existing reason code for whatever the adjustment is. You know, write off bad debt. Maybe it is freight that they didn't want to pay. Whatever. I can add a note here. Whatever that may be. Adjustment agreed per salesman. You know, blah. Whatever. And then of course post the adjustment. And in essence, I've handled the whole process while I'm in here. So while I'm in, the point again here being, while I'm in customer collections, I have the ability to literally do all of these different things. One thing that you'll notice also here is that this customer, I noticed that these guys have prior notes. So you can see before with the first example that I used, these little plus signs that are here, if they're bolded or darkened like this, then they indicate there's a child record there associated with that parent row. And I can see that this person for that particular invoice was called on, you know, November 21st, 2014. And the follow-up date expired a while ago. And they were going to send payment on 11/30. So I can see a listing, and there could be 3, 4, 5, you know, a bunch of different notes in this particular area, you know, for me to to actually be able to see while I'm making that phone call.
Can you change terms on that site, on that part of it?
So you could change terms for a particular document, I mean, by drilling into it. So, you know, if I want to actually drill into the document and modify their terms, then that's something that I can do.
Okay.
Will that reflect on the AR agent report?
Yeah, so I go ahead, I can change their terms to something completely different. And of course, while I'm in here, you'll notice that the due on date just changed when I changed the terms. So, you know, so when your next aging report gets printed, you know, that refresh routine also runs, well, however you got it scheduled, it'll run daily for sure, but, you know, you can run it hourly or more often than that if you want to.
Can you change the invoice date? Occasionally, we have a situation where the invoice never really did get processed. They didn't get it for 2 months. They're going to pay it from the date they got it. So can you, and instead of having it really be 120 days old, it's really 60 days old. Can you change the invoice date to reflect that so it's not, or sometimes in our current system, all of a sudden something pops up that wasn't there the month before or the month before?
Yep. So in this case, if I wanted to change it to February 2nd, I could change that, and then you can see the terms
Okay,
automatically set that 60 days out there to April 3rd.
okay.
Yep, you can make that change, and then
So what's that gonna do to your general ledger if you change the invoice date?
it doesn't do anything GL-wise. I
Just change
mean-
the date?
No, because those are independent. You know what I mean? I mean, the aging's going to be impacted, but the GL just has a total balance in it of X amount of money. You haven't touched the money.
But your monthly balance, if you change that to a different,
Yeah, I mean, if you were to go back and look at, you know, 3 years ago in this case, you know, if you were to go back and say, here was our aging report as of that date, and here's this invoice, then that was in this bucket, you're still, I mean, your total is still your total. These dollars are still in your AR. I agree that your aging wouldn't have been reflected correctly, you know, 3 years ago, but your GL money is all the same.
But they'll change your sales tax report too if that's a taxable customer, right? When you change the date.
It will.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in terms of when that's due or how you pay it, I mean,
Yeah.
sure.
I'm sure that's gap to be able to do that, to change the, I mean, I would worry about,
It doesn't change the value of the asset.
I would just worry about being able to change the date of an invoice and now the detail doesn't match.
You would, right.
Yeah. Invoice
Right.
date didn't change.
You would still have a posting date, the original posting date for when that went in there would still be the same. You're just basically giving the customer a grace that you didn't get it cut, you didn't, that's just a real world scenario
Yeah,
where,
it just happened.
whoops, you didn't get it or whatever. It's still somewhat superficial. I mean, that date is.
I wouldn't do it.
That's totally, I mean, that's just an available option, obviously, within that screen to be able to modify that value.
You're not saying, you can't change the invoice date, can you?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely,
You can change the invoice date as well?
absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, then, if you change the invoice.
What if you made a mistake on, I mean, the shipping guy, when he's invoicing it, so in the shipping screen, there's actually, you can change the date invoiced right there when you're shipping it. Let's say that your company, say that you're behind. Maybe that never happens, hopefully it doesn't, but let's say that you shipped that thing last Friday and it's Monday. So when you're in the shipping screen, you want to say this thing actually got invoiced on Friday. You know, that's going to be the invoice date.
Acclamare's date driven, right?
Yeah, I mean, obviously
For
that's
accounting purposes, what period it's going to be in is date driven, correct?
But it's not driven off of that date.
But it's
That-
not driven off of that date, it's driven
Right.
off of the.
you still have an original posting date that's not being modified whatsoever.
Right.
None of the general ledger
So it
dates.
gives you
So
real
you're not
That's
going to move it
getting
from period to period
impacted.
when you do that.
That-
The aging as of invoice date. You calculate, you change the invoice date?
So, I mean, as of, I mean, same kind of thing. I mean, I don't know that this is a a routine that you guys are gonna all run into all the time.
No, it's a blip, but it's
But
a nice
it's just
fix
a-
to that blip, so you're getting real
Yeah,
numbers rather
there
than
certainly could be an
artificial.
impact to
Changing it from
prior month reporting.
one county
It won't
versus
be-
another.
It won't be calculated to change anything.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a strange deal right there, I mean, that you just mentioned. I mean, if you, let's say that it is a year, you know, you needed to change it by a month. I don't know why you would need to do that, but if you had to change it from, if it was January 20th and somebody changed it back to December, then obviously your end of year accounts receivable aging report, you know, gonna be impacted by that.
But the case that you're talking about, you're just moving it a couple of days.
Or sometimes, I mean, it could, I mean, we've had things on our current system, literally, we're not on the aging, and the next month when we print the aging, all of a sudden it's there. And where did it come from?
No.
It's legitimate, but it,
And so then you
Wasn't
went, so
printed.
then your customer's like,
right, I didn't.
what's the deal?
Yeah.
I didn't get the invoice and,
Right. And is it really fair to already make it 30 days late when
Right.
it's not
Right.
really? Yes, we may have left our facility, but we didn't do our part because of some blip in the, you know, some anomaly in the software somewhere, so.
No, they threw it away.
these
And
are,
you know, my only comment, not to beat this to death, my only comment would be that if you get audited by the IRS and they look at your system date and they pull that invoice on their random invoice thing, which is how they pull things when they come in to audit you, and those dates do not match, you're gonna have a problem.
which two dates don't match?
When the date in the system that says that it was invoiced on
Oh, that
X
date doesn't
date, and then
change.
the document.
Yeah,
But
but you're
that-
saying the
that-
posting date stays the same.
Right, and that's what I'm saying,
Exactly.
the posting date stays the same, but when you print this document, it's got a different date on it.
Yeah,
And you
I
are
agree.
gonna have a problem with the IRS.
I agree that, I mean, you definitely could have an issue if you do that.
There you go, that's
Yeah,
brilliant.
it's changeable.
Change it back. No problem.
Have them call cool.
But I mean, again, it's the real world situation.
And
you
it's
know.
not an everyday,
Exactly.
every month occurrence. It's a,
So,
Yeah, sometimes.
Then
if
again,
the
you're
invoice
not-
doesn't
the
go, and you just
value-
reverse it.
the value, again, isn't,
Stays the same.
value doesn't change. It's not like you are manipulating the dollars.
Well, the question that she had as far as the IRS, that goes with the controls. Well, who has the ability to change those dates?
Anybody that's got access to the sales invoicing screen, which you can certainly limit. Nobody needs access in reality to the sales invoicing screen. There's all kinds of areas to go print sales invoices from. You can go to sales invoice printing and print invoices all day, you know, whether they've been paid, posted, or what have you.
But
So-
whoever gets the creative invoice has the
And-
ability to change it.
Well,
Yep.
most people create invoices from sales order, or they create it from the shipping process, but the actual sales invoice screen, they really don't have to have access to it, to be honest with you. I mean, there's the only reason to be able to go into the sales invoice screen is catch an invoice prior to posting that you need to go ahead and update pricing. Caught an error, you know, when you're looking at the sales invoice register, you haven't posted the document yet. I want to go update that, or any of that header information we just looked at that needed to be modified. You know, other than that, there isn't any reason that anybody would have to access the sales invoice screen directly, because they can get the information in all kinds of other areas. Yeah.
One of the things that we do when we have situations like that where we don't want it to be changed in Acclamare itself is we'll upload the document to Excel, change it there, save it, and then give that to the customer. So that way they're happy, we haven't changed anything, and it's all good.
Got
I
it.
mean, it's pretty simple to do, and then we can save it as a PDF to email it or fax it or whatever. we do.
Right. That's the report viewer. Here's your example. All right. Good. Those are good comments. All real good. All right. Any other questions in this particular area, this interface? Okay. I'm going to go ahead and jump back into the customer payment screen here.
now you're not using that carrot, are you? I mean, are you serious? Yeah. Would it be, I mean, I'm not trying to call
I'm
you
actually
out.
clicking right in the
Right.
action
Right.
because I'm going to go take an action.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna take an action.
I'm not trying to call you out.
No,
I'm just
you're
trying
good.
to find out, you told us to
No,
use it.
yeah,
but I'm
use the
gonna-
carrots, mainly if they have information, okay, if they have information, which this one doesn't, they will have a little dot out to the side.
Okay,
Or if you want to select a row to delete it.
okay,
So if I wanted to delete this line, oftentimes what I see from end users, I can't delete a line in here, but let's say this was sales order entry, which I'll show you later this afternoon, but you know, they'll click in this field right here, and then they'll hit the delete key, and they'll delete whatever in that cell.
right,
And then they'll wonder what's going on. and,
okay, all right.
You know,
I'm just,
yeah, no, good, no, it's a good point. So we'll go take a payment, pop back into the payment screen here. Okay, it's just some other things that I want to note about this payment area in context of what we're going through here with AR. Let's just go ahead real quick again and let's make this a little bit more viewable. Again, this is similar capability that you know, is in pretty much every screen in the application. Remember that while you're in here, I mean, you can create another toolbar, for instance, to work with. If you want to add more customizations to your screen. So if I select new, I can give the toolbar a name, or it'll default a name for me, either one. Puts a new toolbar on the screen. I'm going to go ahead and see if I can grab that with my touchpad here. All right, and now I can go ahead and put additional commands on that particular bar. So for instance, if I want to use that new feature that we just looked at, apply automatically, I can drop that in up here. If I want to add to this, you know, this feature, which is kind of handy, open the customer maintenance area, search for the customer by an invoice. Not as practical as it used to be. A lot of you guys will remember back in the day when UPS, primarily UPS, FedEx I'm sure as well, but it was more UPS back then, used to take cash, used to take COD payments. And then what would happen is you'd get one big check from UPS with a bunch of remittance advice on it, and you wouldn't necessarily know on that remittance advice what customer that payment was associated with. So, you know, the only way to search for that, they'd reference an invoice or an order number on their remittance advice, because that's what was on your tag, your COD tag. And so that's what this search here provides is, you know, I don't know who this customer is, but I can see on the remittance advice here's one of the invoices, so you can search for the customer by invoice number. That's one of the ways that you can do that. Let's put on post this payment and add a new one. I'm going to throw these onto my screen here. Okay. So in this particular case, I'm taking a payment. So I go ahead and specify 34 bucks, or excuse me, the reference is check number, blah, blah, blah. I'll say they're paying $34, and I'll select the line in question. That's another funky thing on the grid right now, but select the line, $34, post this payment, add a new one. If they've sent with their remittance advice, you know, we're now at address XYZ or whatever, you know, right from within here, I can click on open customer maintenance to have it take me right into the customer master, so that I can then go ahead and make whatever changes I need to make. Just as a reminder to you though, as well, let me shrink this down. You know, you can also access the customer file in a similar fashion. Well, I'll show you that when I do the sales orders. You can do the same thing if you have security permissions right from the dynamic inquiry as well. Okay, so at this point, if I wanted to put in a series of payments, I'll go do that. I'll exit out of here and we'll go do a few just so that you can see this process a little bit more clearly. But again, post this payment, add a new one, or simply post this payment if that's what you want to do. Depends on exactly how you're working at this. I'm going to talk about this process just a little bit so that you understand it, particularly for those of you that are evaluators and aren't very familiar with some of these processes.
Why would you post it to a different period?
Any examples? Why would you post it to a different period?
You get a wire transfer and you don't even know you got it until you get your bank statement.
Okay, so let me answer the root of it just for a second here. I'll go right to the root. So back, for instance, in your current system, in your current application, if you want to backdate or post to a prior period, wherever it is, payables, a manual journal entry, you have to go change your system date for your user, which changes your fiscal period and year. Well, we had a lot of experience with that. And our experience oftentimes was people would make that change and then they'd forget. And then they would start posting today's transactions and they'd find out, oh my, I just posted these all in the wrong place. So we actually took a completely different philosophy when it came to that in the application. So many of you know this, but this is the reason. I mean, you know this is how we do it, but the reason why is just kind of just got brought up here. Pretty much all of the main posting areas in the application, this is controlled by security. It's not in sales invoice. It's in sales invoice post is where I was intended to go here. Most of the posting areas have a post to a different period option so that it's a one-off. It's not, I don't have to go change or manipulate dates that are going to impact all kinds of other things, entering orders and whatever. It's just these transactions I want to stab into a different period. And when it says a different period, it means future or past, either one. So, you know, I've got something I want to go ahead and post into next month already rather than wait. You know, I've got it, I'm ready, I'm going to go ahead and do it right now. You can go ahead and do that. So post to a different period gives you the freedom, and again, it's controlled by security. So some users won't have that option at all. But this gives you the ability to just go ahead, you know, customer payment, post it into a different period. Yeah, maybe it's maybe you got it on the 1st and it was, you really put it in the bank 2 days ago.
Okay.
So, you know, something like
Thank
that. You know,
So if you
If
do
you
make,
post it to later,
you can post it early or late, either one.
will it reflect in the aging?
You know, I don't know. You know, the aging I would assume it would, because if it's an invoice, it's a paper record, it's not the GL. I mean, the balance is going to be in the next month on the general ledger, but the aging is just a historical listing of, or just a layout of all the invoices that are out there. So I don't think that it's going to take it out. Would put it on there and throw it in the current bucket is my assumption, but unless you ran an as of some kind.
And another thing, inventory adjustment, you can't post it every day.
Inventory adjustments, I think has the same capability. Oh, you're right. No, there isn't a post to a different period available in there. You have it in most, but not in quantity adjustments. So,
Why would you want it?
yeah, well, we haven't had the request. I mean, most of the time, we get a request and somebody's got some reason why they do it. I mean, physical count, if you want to make a quantity adjustment and post it to a different period, do it through physical count. There you go. There's your workaround. All right.
if you
So
make a mistake, do you still then go and do a manual journal entry?
yes.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. Once it's posted, it's posted. With the exception of what I was talking about that I'll highlight in the AP vendor invoicing thing, where we've added basically a reversal feature in there.
Okay.
You know.
Well, but even that, it still just does the.
It does the
doesn't
entry
go
for
out
you.
and get
It
rid
still
of your
makes the
original
entry.
entries.
No, no, no.
It just reverses your
Sure.
entries.
Right. You just don't have to do a manual entry. Go do it yourself.
Right.
Yeah. All right, going back here into customer payments. All right, let's go ahead and enter a few here. All right, I'm going to go ahead and start with, let's just see. That's not a good one, obviously. So let's find somebody.
A1.
These guys have one, right? So let's just kind of talk for a second here about some of the features that are available to you in this screen. All right, I went through a few of them, but let's talk for a second about some of the columns that are available in the grid. One of the columns that's actually available to you in the grid, I've already actually customized it in here, is the customer account and the customer name. As you can see here, let me just show, let's see, these are my best fit, I'll call them. These columns right here, customer and customer name, are actually not in the grid by default. They're in my grid, but they're not in necessarily by default. You can see down here at the bottom that my dynamic inquiry is up, it's operating. The source of the data is coming from customer payment. That's the vendor that I currently have in question. As I mentioned a moment ago, I can quickly, from within the dynamic inquiry, I can hop around with the information that's in the dynamic inquiry. I can quickly hop into the customer maintenance area if I need to do editing in there. I know I showed you that you could do that over here, but just to illustrate, you can do it through the dynamic inquiry as well. The only reason that we really added customer account number and name to the customer payment grid was for payors. Okay, so I called pay froms, I think in Inspire or Touchstone, if that's where the world that you're coming from. But if you have a payor situation, then this would allow you to see all the different customer accounts, their names within the grid. That's why those particular columns are available to you in here. So let's go through a couple of other features that you have available to you in here. I can see the sales order that this thing came from if I want to see that. You'll also notice that you can set up, and this is true, you can set up the screen to slide, so you can have more fields on there. Not once you get your header information in, if you want to just use the splitter bar to expand the fields to give you more room and access to see. You can also incorporate this feature that you see at the bottom here, where you can make all the columns fit within a view, or if you select this, then you actually get a slider bar across the bottom that will allow you to incorporate and still keep your columns, nicely spaced and easy to read, that kind of thing in terms of working with the grid. That's available in all the grids, by the way. I don't know if Doug didn't really show that in replenishment yesterday. He kind of used the extended details and had all the columns fit on one screen, but for some I know that use replenishment, that's a big part of what they do. They collapse that splitter bar and then they use the slider to have all that additional information available to them as they slide left to right on the screen.
Troy, can you have your
in the
ship
grid.
to up there as well?
What's that?
The ship to, where that particular invoice.
The ship to is, we haven't had anybody request the actual ship to location within this area. You could quickly see it just by clicking on the document and then looking at the shipping information. So, you could drill right to that invoice and then see it in those scenarios. Of course, you could also drill right back to the original sales invoice if you wanted to do that, or sales order, I should say, back to the original order. So you can go from the customer payment, look at the invoice, go back to the original order. You guys would be much better at coming up with examples as to why you might do that than I would be doing it. You guys doing it every day, but the flexibility to do those things is obviously built in there.
So if this were a pay or situation, pay from, pay or,
Yeah.
the customer name might be different than, or the customer number might be different than the customer name.
Yeah, what it would actually do is it would blank out it will, as soon as you put the customer in that was tied to a payor, I don't think I have any set up in here, but as soon as you put that in, it would say this customer is associated with a payor. I'm now, and then it'll say it's going to convert over the payment to the payor. And so this would actually go empty, and this would get populated with the payor
Okay.
name.
Okay, thank you.
And then you'd have all of the transactions that are open and the different customer names in your grid.
Is it fairly easy to set up a payor
Yeah, very easy.
Okay.
Yep. So,
currently?
yeah, it's not difficult at all. I mean, there's one field.
You don't have to show it to everybody.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, there are a lot of people that probably don't know that they exist or why they exist. It's a really cool feature on the AR side that's probably underused. Again, the concept, it's worth mentioning. Customer payors, the idea is that I get a check from some corporate entity that I don't necessarily talk to or ship goods to, but they pay all the bills. And they pay all the bills for several different independent customers of yours. So in those scenarios, a lot of companies on other systems, what they end up doing is getting the check, and then they have to do research on the remittance advice to determine these 4 invoices are for this account, these 3 invoices are for this account, these 3 invoices are for this account. They have to make notes on the remittance, and then they have to enter the check 3 times if there's 3 customers on there. And they just break it up like that. A payor gives you the ability to not have to worry about that. So this is the simple screen to set up a payor. You simply come in here. Let's just see if there are any out there. Yeah, there is. We'll use this one right here. So this is set up as a payor. I can see the customers that are associated to this payor right here with this view. That'll allow me to drill right into those customers as well if I want to do that. In the customer record itself, there is a field down in your shipping and billing area where it says payor, which is where you do the association.
Nice.
So you just create the payor, and then you go into the customers that are applicable, and you just put in that variable right there. That's all. I mean, you type it in, there's a search, and obviously it's not going to search for much here because there's, I think, only 2 records out there. So if I put an S in there, it's not going to search because there's only 1 match, which is, again, something that's unique about our environment as opposed to some other environments. If you put in a partial item number or customer account number, if the system only finds 1 distinct match for what you just entered, partial or full, it doesn't matter, then the search will not fire. It'll just insert that information right into the screen. So if I'm putting in a sales order and I'm putting in item numbers and I know the exact part number, I pop it in there, it just goes right in. It just doesn't pull up the search, making me hit the enter key again or whatever to select that item. So there's your setup. Let's go enter a payment after we do this one for our payor, and we'll just see. I don't know if there's anything open for them, but we'll look. So this customer will say that they're paying cash. If they are, then we added this little feature. Don't have to use it. I mean, the system wants you to put a reference in for the payment. So what we did to speed this up for counter sales and people taking payments at the counter is that we just default the reference name of cash in there. But you can put in initials, whatever's handy, whatever you guys are in the habit of doing. Put in that value, specify the amount. So if I put in some amount that doesn't match and it's a cash payment, so I want you just to notice, that there's a visual clue here that pops up open on the screen. Let's go ahead and just apply it to this document right here. So when I do that, it'll tell me that there is $30 that's due to the customer in terms of change. So that little visual pops open for me so that I can see that if it's a cash payment. All right? So that's just a little something that got added for counter sales and that kind of stuff. So that's pretty new, right?
It was earlier last year.
Okay.
We were aware of it.
So that's recently incorporated since the last conference anyway. So there's an example. If so you have the information available to you to give change in this scenario, you can proceed, post this payment, add a new one. Hasn't been fully applied. Are you going to put that on account or store credit? Yes, I am. And off you go to the next one. So this one I'm going to put in, I'll put in that one of those cable companies here. Okay, so then this is what we were talking about. Just pops open, says the customer you've chosen belongs to a payor. Acclamare is going to switch the source of the payment. So when I do that, it goes ahead. Now you can see it populates the payor. Send pay, brings in this case, it's the customer Sanmina Cable. That's the one that has open documents. I also have, this is a good one to look at. Let's say that they went ahead and sent they sent us a check for, that's going to be $27.50. They sent us a check for $27.50. Oh, I keep doing that. They put in our reference. $27.50, and then I can go ahead and select credits that are out there and that are available that I want to go ahead and apply to as a part of this whole transaction. So now you can see I got $100 to apply, and obviously I'm going to apply it to that one document. That's why I was doing my calculations. So let me just again emphasize why we do it this way. So when we first, again, keep in mind that we work with other distribution software products in the past. As you know, we looked at how they did things. We looked at what problems that we had. We went out and did some research on a little bit more efficient methods to process payments. And what we found talking to real people that were processing, accounts receivable checks every day is that they really didn't like how systems that we did it in the past did it. And so one of the things that they brought up over and over again, which is our process here, is that they wanted to be able to not have to go through their checks twice. They wanted to be able to go through the checks one time. Instead of creating a bank deposit first and then applying payments. They wanted to enter the payments and then worry about how they wanted to do their bank deposit, what they wanted to include and what they didn't want to include. So the way that we do this is, then we don't have any restrictions on, for instance, I'll give you an example. So here's a quick example. So with this particular payment, I'm going to go ahead and select, I'm going to take that off. That's what's doing that to me. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and post this payment and add another new one. So if I go ahead and again select this, go ahead and change it. So I can keep putting in checks for the same customer on the same account repetitively without any concerns whatsoever, because that first check goes in, gets fully applied, posted, I'm done working with the account, the next payment's just the next payment. That allows, again, you to quickly move through all your checks and that remittance, do all of the application and entry at one time, you're done. And then all of the funds, from a general ledger standpoint, get posted into an account called undeposited funds. All right? And this is important for those of you that are on this side of the GL for reconciliation purposes. Okay, so there's an account in the system called undeposited funds. And it's really easy from an accounting standpoint to reconcile this, I mean, it should be as simple as any account that you have in your general ledger. If that account right there has a value in it, if there is a value, and of course it should be a positive value, if it has a value in it, then if you go over here to accounts receivable and bank deposits, and you pull up what payments are out there, oh my heavens,
Unhandled there.
there you go, inevitable. When you pull up your bank deposit, it'll show you what payments are out there. Those payments that are out there are going to sum to an amount that must match what's in undeposited funds. No exceptions. Okay? I mean, that's exactly what it represents. I mean, whatever I have in my list, in my bank deposit, is what's in undeposited funds. And when I go ahead and have my listing in bank deposit of credit cards, checks, cash, whatever, the beauty of the bank deposit list is I can pick and choose exactly what I'm taking to the bank. It's not random. So literally when I'm going to do my bank reconciliation, should be much easier because I know exactly what went into every batch. So I'm choosing my records, I go right through, I'm in good shape. Oh. Okay. All right. So again, payors, awesome feature, probably not real common. Again, just one of those subtleties that's really nice. While I am on that subtle feature, let me mention another one that I don't think gets a ton of traction. And if I'm not mistaken, this is one that James, I think this is one you suggested before you were on the software.
Could be, if you tell me what it is.
Okay, so we have a feature in the system that we call miscellaneous cash receipts. Okay, Bert's nodding his head, but here's the idea. So this applies to the AR person to some extent. If you get a check in the mail from the insurance company, they're not a customer. They're a vendor. They're sending back money you overpaid. Maybe it's a vendor that's sending you money from a rebate. You know, whatever. I mean, maybe it's, you know, maybe it's the, yeah, I was gonna say maybe it's the government, but likely would be, right? Could be. Okay. So whatever it is, you know, the issue always was twofold, at least in the past with other systems I'm familiar with. One, how do I enter the payment? Because they're not a customer, and I don't really want to set them up as a customer. So what traditionally people would do is have some dummy account out there, and then they'd have to go create some kind of charge and put the check in and apply it to get it all in there the way they wanted it. Or they'd have to do a manual journal entry to account for it, something like that. So, and then the problem with that is that they'd have to do a separate bank deposit for it because they couldn't get it in their regular bank deposit. So miscellaneous cash receipts allows you to take a payment, cash, check, wire, credit card, you know, it doesn't matter what it is. You come into miscellaneous cash receipt, you specify, you know, whatever the amount is, put in whatever your reference is. Again, you know, it could be any of those forms of payment. And this is kind of a catch-all right there, electronic funds, whether it's wire or however you got it. You can put in a note about what it was for, and then you can specify.
Now, there's a drop-down for the notes too? Does that already have some pre-selected?
Now, this is just a blob where you can type in basically up to 8,000 characters.
Okay.
It's a big field. Then you would actually in here choose the offset account for where it goes. So when you choose that, that's actually going to put the money, it's going to go ahead and debit your undeposited funds. So it's going right into the same area. It's not yet in a bank deposit yet. It's going right into that same area, and then you offset it to whatever the P&L account is, that's associated with it. Or if it's some kind of prepaid liability or whatever. I mean, I guess you could offset it to that too. But so that's the idea behind miscellaneous cash receipt. So now when I've done this, again, that gets collected in bank deposit and then allows me to include that with my regular deposit. I don't have to have a separate one.
I like
So
that.
yeah, it's a nice feature. So it gets a lot of use. Been handy, been really handy. Everybody has a requirement or a need for it. So it's been a good thing, and it makes our reconciliation process, doing it like this, much easier and much cleaner. I used to get questions all the time about people trying to figure out what was in their bank deposits, and we would do everything we could creatively to create more bank accounts, more ways to segregate stuff, to say, well, what's causing all the problems? Well, these are the things causing all the problems. And they're like, well, let's just associate those to this bank, and then we'll keep the clean stuff over in this bank, and that'll be easier to track. That's what we used to do in other systems. But in Acclamare, it's a lot cleaner. You can, again, create your deposits. They'll be exactly the way they go to the bank. All right? Any questions on any of that? Yes? Matt, to help. Oh. Yeah, so, yeah, we did incorporate that feature into customer payment. So if you wanted to scan, if you had a scanner, Doug, will you just come up here for just a second and put you on the spot? What's that?
Miscellaneous cash receipt, there is a cash document.
Yeah. Come on up. So I'm basically, Doug's like, what in the world? I'm not prepared. So I just want Doug real quick, because we talked about attached documents, and I've seen a few of you existing customers, even kind of the light go on a little bit about this. So Doug's done a lot with attached documents in terms of incorporating scanning devices for doing this. Can you give us an example, for instance, in a customer payment? You don't have to do any demo, but
Yeah.
in speaking to it, just, in this scenario, how would it work?
Yeah, in a customer payment, well, first of all, if you can pull any document in that you already have an electronic copy of, as you're saying, and it doesn't, it's all multimedia. If Windows can open it, you can put it in there. So if it's going to be a video, such as an item, you may want to have a short video stuck in there as an attached document. So as your salesperson's at the desk and they're trying to explain to their customer how to assemble something or how to open, how to assemble a product, you can go ahead and open up the attached document, and it'll actually give a little video display that assists your customer service people in telling your customer how to operate it. So again, worksheets, like a spreadsheet. If you put a spreadsheet in there, it's not just a copy of a spreadsheet, it's a living document. So you put an Excel sheet in there and you double click it as an attached document, you can go ahead and edit it and save it right in there. So it can be a living piece. Now, if you want to scan things on the fly, scanners are relatively cheap that you can put right on your user's desktop. Some take up, very little space. It could be as big as like this projector, or little strip scanners that you see in your doctor's offices to scan cards. So in a case like this, in a customer payment, I would go ahead and open up the attached document. And in many cases on your scanners that you get, they will have a little utility that allows you to program a button on the front of the scanner that when you press it, it will go ahead and scan the document and ask you or prompt you where you want to place that document. Or you can predefine where the document goes into a common folder. So in that case, if everything goes into a common folder and you click attach documents, we got error there.
My payment's not done.
Okay.
You can either delete it or look up a new one.
That's right. I'll put something in there. Get in here.
You might not be as skilled with my mouse pad.
Yeah. Hate mouse pad. But once your attached document will come up, you'll say you want to add a new one. And if everything went into a shared folder, you'll just see it appear there. You double click it and it adds it in. So you can add those customer checks right on the fly. That same functionality appears anywhere where attached documents is, where you can either pull from an existing email file that you have, a PDF, or just have it set up so you can immediately scan something in and pull that in. So scanners are relatively inexpensive now. I mean, you can get some of these you can get down to around $100 that you can put in there. The one I still use and still recommend is one called a Documate 152. It's actually marketed under the name Visionaire, but it's really manufactured by Xerox. It works really well because the programming features on that allows you to increment the naming sequence so that if you have multiple people entering documents into a single folder, you can say that if it comes from Debbie's computer, it's going to be prefixed or suffixed with your initials or your name, so you can distinguish between which documents people scanned in.
Awesome. Thank you, Doug.
Troy, may I ask a quick question? Back on that other screen, you had an email receipt option.
Yep.
Currently, when a customer calls in, wants to pay for an old invoice with a credit card, we, print off a copy of the transaction, black out our account number because our account number's on the top and we don't want them to have that. Does this not have account information on it?
Yeah, this is fairly, the receipt in the customer payment itself is fairly new functionality. Haven't had it a long time. But you can be whatever you want. It's a customizable form.
Okay.
Let's put it that way. So our standard, Dawn, I have to pull up and look at it myself to see exactly what's on it, but it's very simple. Customer name, amount that
Yeah,
they
because that's all,
paid.
but they want proof that they've paid it,
That's
but
all
it's
it
got our
is.
banking information at the top, so we have to take a Sharpie, black it out.
Oh, yeah, no, this is just a little
Okay.
custom form that's exactly what you're talking about.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Good question. All right. Okay. Again, just a couple other things here in the customer payment screen. So, one of the things that we looked at here just a second ago, again, applying credits. So, as you go through and you're applying, your funds, any customer that has available credits are right here, and this goes back to this discussion that I got into a second ago, where I got a little derailed with the bank deposit piece. But what the process is, I get the checks in the mail. They're in a pile. I'm ready to go through them. I just want to go through them once. As I go through and I look at the remittance advice, at the top of the remittance is usually the credits that they want to take. So the idea here is that I actually here in the amount, I put in what the check is for, and then I look at the top of the remittance advice and I select the credits that are involved, which tells me what the actual total amount of the payment is. So the payment, is more than actually what I'm, the funds that they've sent, because they're applying these credits. And then that gives me a logical flow to burn through that, and then burn against their open invoices, and then on to the next one in this fashion. All right, and then build and worry about my bank deposit later. Again, I hope that you don't do this, because I don't think it's a great practice, but we did have customers historically that were like, we go to the bank every Friday, and they might have all that stuff on hand for 3 or 4 days or 5 or whatever, because they, didn't submit it electronically. A lot of you guys submit it electronically right now, just that day. You have a little device there, scans your checks, send them through, accumulates them, sends the deposit right to the bank. Sweet deal. A lot better than the past, but
Because of your miscellaneous cash receipts and what you do, your bank deposits and everything, I reconcile my bank account every day. More than 5 minutes, 2 minutes.
oh, that's
I
cool.
know exactly what plays.
Yeah, it's works great. It works great for me. Of course, you know, we're a software company. We're not a wholesale distributor, but we use Acclamare. I mean, to manage our business.
You don't receive checks, you say?
We don't, yeah. Exactly. No, we,
We don't get paid, we're a nonprofit, right?
exactly, totally. But we use the software to do our own business, and, you know, when it comes to doing bank reconciliation, I mean, it's just, it's the slickest, easiest thing that,
Takes hours.
I mean, it just doesn't take any time at all. We do have some companies out there that do daily reconciliation, which is good to do depending on the volume of transactions that you got. I mean, we've got some companies out there that are processing, you know, 2,000 invoices a day, and, you know, with that kind of volume and that amount of payments, then sometimes it's really handy to be able to go in and just do your bank rec a little more frequently than once a month or worse. All right. Okay. Couple other features that are available to you here that I'm going to finish with. All right. These actions that you have at the top of your screen. We just talk about these two to start with here. So, in essence, these two options right here, reverse this payment, mark this payment NSF, are the same in terms of how Acclamare interprets them. I mean, they do the same thing. So if you have a situation where, and this happens, even though, you know, my partner thinks that it shouldn't. No, picking on him, but reverse this payment, you have someone that enters the check on the wrong account. Okay, they just, whoops,
This is real to
put
life.
that payment in on the wrong account. So it was your error. Reverse this payment. Well, basically, again, there isn't anything in the system, just so you know, that's, I guess, worth making a point. There isn't anything in Acclamare that will delete a general ledger transaction. We have not one shade of logic that will delete a GL transaction. So when we reverse, we post a reversing entry. The original entry doesn't get touched. All right? It's untouched. So reverse this payment. If I applied this to the wrong customer account, what ends up happening when the post happens is obviously, you know, AR is impacted, undeposited funds is impacted, and then from an aging standpoint, if there are credits or on accounts and invoices involved in the detail, system's going to go ahead and clear all those and make your entries. If you reverse, it's reinstating all of those and basically posting reversing entries to the general ledger that in essence wash the other entries. And there's no harm done. That's what the reversal does. Okay? Basically, that's the process. Mark this payment NSF is identical. Doesn't do anything different than that. It just has one additional piece of logic. It sticks an NSF date in the customer's account, which triggers hold conditions and other things for you. But in reality, there is no difference between those two in terms of what they're doing behind the scenes. They're both reversing, reinstating, you know, that's basically the whole process.
Troy, does it matter whether it's the money is in undeposited funds or if you run the bank deposit?
Nope, that's a good question. It really doesn't. The system will detect what the status of the payment is. So if the payment is just posted and not yet deposited, then that indicates what accounts it needs to impact. So it knows based on that. If it's been deposited, then it actually will go look at what was the cash, you know, account that it was deposited in, and then it will reverse it back to its original state like that.
But if you reconcile it, you can't reverse the payment.
I don't know if it'll prevent you. I mean, you shouldn't, but I don't know that there's logic in there to keep you from doing that right now.
Wouldn't that be?
Did it tell you?
Pretty sure that either that or somebody told me you couldn't do it.
There's not a good practice in doing it, obviously, but,
I went to reverse a payment and I had applied a credit that the vendor gave us and it wouldn't let me reverse the payment. I had to-
on the AP side,
Yeah, the AP payment, yes.
that could be. I mean, we have the same feature, the same reversal feature on the accounts payable side. There probably is a couple of restrictions on that. That could be. I can't think of any on the customer payment side that we lock down. Of course, at this point, I mean, your reversal or you're marking this payment NSF is not optional to a different period. It's doing it that day. So, I mean, it's not doing it in some past or future tense. It's doing it right then. I mean, in terms of its use, I think it's really handy. I think that it's one of those things that it becomes invaluable for fixing situations that you run into. I think it's good for you guys to kind of know how that works and why it works the way it does. All right.
There are some restrictions.
On the reversal? Yeah, go ahead.
No?
Nope. I don't know. Go ahead.
Okay. You can't reverse it if it's already been marked as an NSF.
Oh, it's already been reversed.
Well, it's already been NSF. You can't reverse it if it's already been reversed. So you can't double reverse. Oh, if it hasn't been posted, it won't reverse because there's nothing to reverse, so it just tells you to delete it instead.
Right.
And then finally, if there's an associated credit card payment, it won't let you reverse it until you go void the credit card payment first.
That's all.
That's it.
Cool.
That's the only thing that
It
restricts
tells
you.
you to redeposit the NSF also.
Yeah, sometimes they do. I mean, they try to, try it 2-3 more times.
How do you mark that too? As an option or?
You've got to do a new payment.
You'd have to do a new payment. Yeah.
Once you get it marked as reversed or NSF, that payment is finished. You can create a new payment to try it again, but that payment is finished.
Okay.
Is that only a New York City thing?
All right.
Probably.
So let me just take a quick look here. Talked about customer payors. Oh, let me give you another one here real quick. All right, so let's say that you have the situation where somebody bounces a check and you want to go ahead and assess them some kind of fee to their account. That would be the use for a manual AR document. That'd be a great use for it. All right, so manual AR documents are transactions, both charges and credits that you can apply to customer accounts that do not tie to any inventory. Okay, they're just strictly tied basically to a GL account through a GL reason code. So again, just to refresh for you, reason codes, they're all found under general ledger adjustment reasons here. I'm going to go ahead and sort, or I should say group. I'm going to group my grid here by the reason code type so that we can kind of see them together here. All right, so again, the concept, there's a lot of areas in the transactional side for adjustments and things like that. I'll cover a few of these when we get to MP tomorrow. But we basically have and this is kind of a mentality from the past, not that it's a bad one, but you basically, there's a lot of people that perhaps work at your place of business that aren't very familiar with your chart of accounts, and more than that, they really don't understand what a chart of accounts is. All right. So basically, you can create your own schedule, user-defined, of reasons and associate them with particular accounts. It's good for your own tracking, and obviously it's good to enable your people to be able to, initiate certain types of transactions that they know how to make, they just don't know how to code from a general ledger standpoint. So if you have a scenario where a check has been bounced, bad check fee type of situation, looks like Doug never had that. Is that true, Doug?
Never had anybody bounce a check.
You don't sell any, or you don't sell any.
Yeah.
All right, I'll just put this in. I'll put it in the write-off area, but it could go into some fees account or whatever. But so once you have a reason code defined, if I go back over here to accounts receivable manual AR documents, simple, the screens are all the same in terms of how they work. I can put in a description. This is a NSF check, fee for check number, whatever it is. It's a charge or a credit. Obviously, I'm not going to give them a credit for bouncing a check with us. Then I can go ahead and indicate who the customer is, look them up, put in my partial. On my reason codes, I can then identify what I've got out there. I just created this one. I could have specified, you can be as descriptive as you want. And then whatever the fee is that's associated with a bad check at your business. Specify that, obviously post it, creates it out there, you can print it, send them a copy of it, whatever at that point. So that gives you the quick ability, again, manual AR documents from an AR standpoint, quick way to go ahead and handle credits or charges that are not product related. All right, so whatever they may be. So good way for you if you have some kind of customer rebate program, at your business, and you needed to be able to say you got a credit on account of X amount of money for this rebate program, then you could do it through manual AR documents. All right, last one here to mention, we'll go ahead and break for lunch, is in the customer statement printing. Okay, I just want to go ahead and show this real quickly. Customer statement printing basically is similar in terms of its layout to the customer collections area that we were looking at before. Uses similar logic to go out there and identify customers that are set up to receive statements. Again, there's a place within the customer master that you can specify whether the customer receives statements or not. Those customers are retrieved in here. The beauty of this screen, some customers, even if they don't have a balance, they want a monthly statement that shows they don't have a balance. That might seem weird to some of you. It seems weird to me, but I have I have worked with customers like that. So I like the fact that you can use the grid in here to help you to check mark what you want to what you're interested in working with. Like Doug showed yesterday up here in the grid, you can open the filter editor. That's one way, or you can go to custom. Either way, open document balance, is greater than 0. Apply. So these are the only customers that have a balance that's greater than 0. I want to quickly select those as the ones that are going to get statements. If I uncheck that filter, you can see the only ones that it's selected are the ones that have a balance. It's just a quick way to use the checkbox functionality in the grids that you do use it and work with it. You can filter the grid, then check the boxes that you want. As soon as I hit this print button right here, If the customer's set up for email, it'll email. If they're set up for fax, it'll send it to the faxing software. If it's set to print, it'll print a hard copy. All right?
Are you able to have more than one email address in the email?
Yeah, you actually can have an unlimited number. I'll cover that in the document control section tomorrow afternoon.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay. So, any other questions? All right, I'm about maybe 10 minutes early. Lunch will be available pretty much right away down in the up in the atrium on the 7th floor. So we will convene here right after lunch, 1:15, and we'll get started again. All right.
Thank you.
You bet. Thank you, Bert. All right.
Yes, ma'am.